This whole program is actually meant to encourage lenders to be able to go into areas where traditionally we haven't been giving sufficient support. So, for example, supporting SMEs in areas like agriculture, manufacturing, being able to support companies in particular that are women-led.
For one thing, M-Kopa phone is as it's a pay-as-you-go phone, so you don't have to hustle about getting the money to buy the phone. When I acquired the M-Kopa phone, and I used it to boost my business, and through that business, I've been able to get more revenue, hence increasing my income.
We at BII focus on regions that are often overlooked by commercial investors, places where doing business is tough and private sector activity remains limited. In 2024 alone, we committed £880 million to some of the poorest and most fragile countries across our markets. This session is about the innovators and entrepreneurs operating in these challenging environments and the communities whose lives are being transformed through access to finance, energy, and opportunity. We're joined today by three remarkable leaders. Sebastian Ashong-Katai, Managing Director of Ecobank Sierra Leone, who is working to expand financial inclusion in a country where many still lack access to basic banking services. Luke Burris, co-founder and COO of MOPO in the Democratic Republic of Congo, a company delivering clean, affordable energy to off-grid communities. And Jonas Alemu, founder and managing director of Lovegrass Ethiopia, an agribusiness creating jobs and improving livelihoods for farmers across Ethiopia. A big welcome to you all, and thank you for giving us your time. Sebastian, I'm going to start by asking you a question. If you can just talk through some of the challenges that you faced in trying to promote financial inclusion and extend banking services to the underbanked.
Thank you very much, and good morning to all our listeners at BII and around the world. One of the key challenges we face is in relation to data, and by that I refer to the availability as well as the quality of data that we have to be able to work with. Data around the behavior of potential customers, their incomes, their credit worthiness. These are all areas where we find challenges. For example, Ecobank is working in a province of the country called Kenema, where there's a lot of cocoa farming activity. And we've recently been in touch with large groups of cocoa farmers who have been dealing primarily on a cash basis, and we're trying to bring them into the formal sector so that we can support them better. You find it's rather challenging to have any sort of useful information around the way in which they operate, around how much they actually make, and around their ability to really be able to repay any credit that we try to extend. We also have some challenges around documentation, around the lack of identification, formal identification documents that we can use. We also have challenges when it comes to how these institutions actually approach the banking sector with respect to financial statement availability and quality and preparation when it comes to preparation of good quality business plans, and generally putting together information in a way that a bank can actually consume. So we find that we do spend a lot of time trying to address these barriers before we can even begin to look at bringing these entities and serving them within the financial sector.
Thank you, Sebastian. That's a good summary of some of the data challenges that we know are present across our markets in different sectors as well. But I'll turn now to Luke, because you're delivering off-grid energy projects in the DRC, and I suspect that alongside also having challenges with data access, that you're probably facing more operational challenges. Would you be willing to talk us through some of those in your work?
Yes, great to be here. And yeah, very much echo what Sebastian said. We actually started our business in Sierra Leone, or as Sierra Leoneans call it, Salone. That was our first country back in 2017. We also operate in Nigeria, most recently DRC with in partnership with BII, Liberia, and then Chad and Uganda as well. So we got quite spread across the continent, which is really cool. What do? Well, we rent batteries, just like this little one here. This is our smallest battery called the Mopo 50. And we rent big batteries like this called the Mopo Max. And we do that from power stations, solar power stations that we install all across the country. In terms of challenges, I think like most businesses, and especially hardware businesses installing infrastructure like Mopo, capital has been the #1 challenge for us. I think running a business in fragile environments like some of the countries that we operate in is the same as running a business anywhere. You need to get product market fit. You need a compelling solution that the customer cares about and wants to pay for. You can do that quite quickly in Africa, and especially in some of the markets where we started in Sierra Leone. There's a great need that people have for power and for all kinds of services. But then the challenge of raising significant amounts of capital in a sustainable way is tricky because of the nature of the fragile markets. I think we've probably come through that mostly. Just this year, we brought on Octopus Energy as our largest shareholder. And I think we're in a place where we can really begin to scale. And now our new challenge beyond capital that I think we'll start to experience now is creating good growth. And I think that's what Sebastian's pointing to as well. A lot of businesses in places like Salone can grow, do have product market fit, but need to create good sustainable growth in places where crisis is often the norm. And so I think a lot of the challenges Sebastian experiences as well will be the challenges that we have going forwards now that we've got good partnerships in place with people like BII and Octopus Energy.
That's also a resonant point, and I think this is a good time to bring in Jonas. Jonas, you've heard about challenges with data access and, of course, the crucial element, which is access to financing and capital. You yourself have left a career in investment banking to go back to Ethiopia and then set up a business focused on improving livelihoods for farmers and workers in Ethiopia. Can you tell us about the issues that you're facing in trying to deliver impact through this model?
Look, first of all, I just want to say thank you to the BII team, to you, to everybody who has given me the opportunity to be here to talk to you about what's going on, even for a small business like ours on the front line in the middle of Ethiopia. So I want to say thank you to everybody because this is a huge opportunity for me. So you mentioned farmers, and let me tell you a little bit about me and how the business started. First of all, I was one of the farmers there. I grew up in rural Ethiopia, and then I got a scholarship and ended up in Bulgaria. So and then to the UK and ended up in investment banking, and I am just one of those blessed people. That's how I see it. We've had this exposure and wide exposure and lived experiences of different environments. So when I go back often to see when I was still working here in London. I go back to Ethiopia to visit family. So not much has happened, not much has changed. Farming is traditional. The market, the way it works is traditional. The thought process is the same, rarely perturbed. There is no new way of doing things as a model to rely on. So this is basically what we at Lovegrass Ethiopia try to do. Just, I want to say a little bit about Ethiopian farmer and Ethiopia and the community and the society in general. 75% plus of Ethiopia, of 120, 130 million, whomever you ask now, is agrarian, is smallholder farmers. So you go from north to south, east to west, the livelihood is pretty much the same, identical. The problems are the same. We could attack those problems in a very modular and a very strategic way. As people sometimes, even in Ethiopia, cannot quite define what these farmers are. I think Ethiopia is a nation of entrepreneurs, a nation of business people. Farmers are business people. They use land, they use grain, they use seeds, they use fertilizers and some input labor, and then they produce something, bring it to market, and then hoping that whatever they input is, whatever they get as an output, as what they sell, is bigger or better than what they input into it, which is profit. To me, that is a classic definition of business. So just like any other business, these businesses require ideas, they require investment, and they require a new way of doing things. They want to see something different, so they pivot, they do something differently. And when we go back to Ethiopia, when we started this business, that's basically what we do. We question the way they think. We show them there is a different way of doing things. And our line of business specifically is we have got this Ethiopian grass seed called teff, which is what our flatbread, the most popular thing, whoever knows Ethiopian knows about it. We make bread, flat bread out of it, which is a conduit for all sorts of sauce, variety of sauces. So that is what we have always done. The majority of Ethiopians farm that, but outside of that traditional use, this seed, this grass seed has absolutely no other use, no other industrial use. So that's what we are trying to show, to change. Look, this is nutritionally as good as quinoa, if not better. So how can we not bring this to the world? How can it be one of those vehicles to fight poverty and to, at the same time, to change the way our community thinks and lives? And that is the kind of what we're working on. As for the problems, I'm sure most of you know the problems. Problems for an entrepreneur equates opportunities, infinite number of opportunities, virtually everywhere you look, hardly everywhere you look there in the market, hardly anything is done. So much to do, and that is how I see it. I think I stop here and then, yeah.
No, that's great. I really like this idea of farmers as business people who we can empower further through development finance. And so just staying with you, Jonas, a quick follow-up question, because Lovegrass Ethiopia has specifically received support through the African Impact Accelerator ARIA in the form of technical assistance. So could you just give a little bit more detail on the sort of specific kinds of things you've been able to do with farmers and changing their mindsets using the technical assistance available through ARIA?
Yeah. Okay, so what we just specifically what we do in Lovegrass is we went with what we call the 3 tenets of Lovegrass, our main goals. Can we build a factory, a production capacity, and an institutional capacity locally in Ethiopia? Our factory is 100% Ethiopian, and we say it proudly. Of course, we bring in the technology from all around the world, from the UK, South Africa, Turkey, etc., with all the training. So, and also to bring in nutrition, kind of fight malnutrition, and also develop a model for farming within the farming community that, we hope to expand to neighboring areas. So when you have this kind of big goals and dreams and aims, obviously, in the first place, you have to plant the thought, the belief that it can be done. It's possible. It is not an easy task. There aren't many believers. The finance industry locally are nowhere to be seen inside. There is a far more lucrative area of trade and import, export, etc., which is far more lucrative, which will be finance. So, when you are in this kind of environment after many years of proving a lot of concepts, it's a very, very lonely environment. And there aren't many backers, even on an idea basis. And that's where ARIA came into this. With all honesty, I mean, I was suffering from a lot of fatigues of this kind after many failed moments when ARIA was really seriously following this and helping us speak the language of the investor, because a lot of people will tell you, a lot of investors will tell you, oh, we want to invest, but there aren't a lot of companies that are investable, which is true. Local businesses, small business, as I said, a nation of entrepreneurs dying for investment, financial ideas, new ways of doing things, but they can't speak the language of the investor. And this is where ARIA came. Where, they talk about ESG, and when you're fighting with day-to-day, month-to-month, whether you can meet your liabilities, etc. When somebody talks to you about these sort of things, you don't see the value of it, and that speaks to the majority. And ARIA really make it happen. They stood by our side and they took us through the entire process. They helped us develop. Even when we believe in it, we don't have the capacity, the time, there's not enough hours in the day. So this is what ARIA has enabled us to do, speak the language of the investor. And the investors, as you know, have different risk profile, different demands, different requirements, and they have enabled us to do. And I just can't ask enough how this is so important in that continent, especially. Well, I speak about Ethiopia for now. In Ethiopia, how this is transformative for the youth, for the people. Just be able to tell some stories, show people that it is possible. Within Ethiopia, things can be transformed. There is, the sky is a limit, infinite amount of opportunities there for the youth, especially. So ARIA are doing an incredible job.
That's really heartening to hear. But I was also struck by some of your descriptions of this being a lonely journey or a difficult journey. So I thought I'd bring Luke back in and ask a little bit about sort of your journey as an innovator and an entrepreneur in these frontier markets, and some of the lessons that you may have learned through the course of your work that you think others on the line may benefit from.
Yes, no, I'm quite clearly, from my accent, not from the continent. I'm very British and a proud Yorkshireman, and so I think the main thing that I learned doing business on the continent was that there is a huge number of entrepreneurs, and I think some of the best entrepreneurs on the planet. If you grow up in a very fragile environment, you are constantly working out how to create income, how to create businesses, how to create services, how to do things. And we employ about 1,200 entrepreneurs. We're hiring about 20 a week at the moment. And all of them are really hungry to create business and get those core concepts of generate revenue, make sure your revenue is better than your costs, and run a business. What the entrepreneurs lack is, I think, what I as a Yorkshireman has tried to bring to them is we need to go and get some capital. Sebastian, I'm sure, will recognize it's very difficult for a lot of these entrepreneurs to get capital in the same way as I am able to do it in the UK. So if I can get some capital and bring it to those entrepreneurs. And then the other thing is get access to technology and supporting parts of an infrastructure. Our offices in the UK, we have the internet, we have roads, we have electricity, we have all of these supporting pieces of infrastructure. But also I can go on Amazon right now and have a look, or I can go on Alibaba and I can buy pretty much anything. And in a lot of these fragile environments, you have the best in the world entrepreneurs without access to sufficient capital and without access to sufficient technology. And therefore, I think as us as business leaders are thinking about that, all we need to be doing is bringing them what they need, capital and technology. And then it's truly explosive what those guys can create. And I think Mopo's entire business is built by partnering with those local entrepreneurs and bringing them what they need, listening and hearing what they need, and then empowering them to go and create businesses like anywhere else. I'm genuinely really excited for the continent. been doing their things there for almost 10 years now, because I think the best entrepreneurs in the world just need a little bit of a chance to create something, and then they're going to create something truly amazing. To talk a little bit about that, we recently took on investment from Octopus Energy, who are now the UK's biggest energy provider and doing some really innovative things around the world. And I think they joined us because we talked about the fact that the continent has the opportunity to teach the world how to do renewable energy, distributed renewable energy. You know, we've seen in Europe recently some kind of false starts with renewable energy, and I think the continent really has the opportunity to prove something through these entrepreneurs, through starting again with how we would do renewables in that environment. And yeah, I think there's a lot to learn from the entrepreneurs on the continent.
I think some of your remarks are a perfect segue to bring Sebastian back into the conversation, particularly how easy you made it sound that all we need to do is connect capital and technology to the entrepreneurs across the African continent. But I know it's not as easy as that. And so, Sebastian, I was hoping you could talk a little bit about your partnership with BII and how partnering with us has helped address some of those barriers to financial inclusion, and particularly getting capital to SMEs and some of the challenges around that, but also how we've been able to work together to deliver that.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, I mean, I do agree with Luke in many ways. And I also like Jonas's approach of looking at the challenges as opportunities, and very much identify with that. Our relationship with BII in Sierra Leone started in October 2024, when we signed a $25 million risk-sharing agreement with them. But also quite proud to say that was not our first contact, because EcoBank Sierra Leone is part of the EcoBank group that operates across 33 countries in Africa. And we have done a transaction with BII in the past. We did one with our French subsidiary on a trade transaction that allowed them to provide support to multiple countries and entrepreneurs across Africa. So what we're doing in Sierra Leone is embarking on a 5-year journey. There's 4 years left of that, where we're now being able, with the support of BII, to lend more into sectors where perhaps we may not have been as deliberate in the past. For example, we're looking at climate and renewable energy. We're in partnership with a company called Multitech, for example, that sells and installs solar energy systems. And what we're doing is we're providing financing to companies that can then purchase from Multitech as part of that partnership. The exciting thing about BII's partnership with us is, apart from the actual risk share and funding, there is also a capacity building aspect of it, where we have a technical assistance program that's training several of the EcoBank team members, first of all, in how to build capacity around SME businesses, how to build capacity around managing the lending and the selling business itself. So even beyond the $25 million risk share, there are several transactions which have come into being, but not necessarily booked under that program, but they've come into being because of the skills and confidence that's being built out of the technical assistance. Another area, for example, is our gender-based financing. This program has allowed us to accelerate our own homegrown program that is called Elevate. So Elevate is made out of the French word for female, which is L. So we're looking to elevate the females within our communities who are in business, because the statistics show that a large percentage of the SMEs that are operating here are actually run by women. And Elevate provides access to finance, access to markets, and financial capacity and management capacity for businesses. So the fact that we have BII behind us, we actually have a bigger share of the risk being borne by BII when we support businesses that are run by women, businesses that have majority management women, or businesses that are producing goods and services that are consumed in the majority by women. We're also being able to extend ourselves further in the area of infrastructure financing. So in the area of water, for example, we've worked with a company called So Pure that was producing drinking water. And now they've been able to actually invest in additional equipment that allows them to manufacture their own packaging, and that allows them to also enhance their distribution strategy. So now they're investing and they're actually being able to hire over 100 more people. And we believe that they're going to be able to grow even further with their investment in the packaging plants that they have. We're also working with a company called Shalimar, which is within the transportation and logistics sector. That's another key area for us because we believe that for a country to be able to really develop, logistics are really important. And transportation is a major area of this. Shalimar brought these three-wheelers into the market, and I'm sure Luke would know a lot about these. And now they're looking to be able to transform to electric-driven vehicles, and we're supporting them with that, with financing as they go ahead. So we're being able to solve problems around, for example, our single obligor limit. As you know, we have regulatory limits around how much we can actually lend to any individual borrowers. And with the support of BII, we're being able to go beyond that from their guarantees. We're being able to increase our funding access to key sectors that I have mentioned. And most importantly, we're being actually able to extend financing over longer periods of time. One of the key challenges that businessmen here have faced is that most of the banks are lending within the short end of the financing time frame. We're being able to now extend 4-year, 5-year financing so that businesses can actually invest in capital equipment that moves their operations onto a different scale. And by so doing, we're doing a lot of job creation, and we're really proud of this partnership.
That's really exciting and impressive to hear the diversity of different projects that you're being able to extend financing for. And I think we're almost at about time, so I might just finally turn to Luke to very quickly wrap us up, because based on the comments you've heard from your colleagues, from Sebastian and Jonas, what would you say then are the sort of final critical enablers that we're missing to help build further resilience in places like the DRC, but also more broadly across the frontier markets where development finance is seeking to have greater impact?
Yeah, I think partnership with the private sector is absolutely crucial. I think BII does a good job of this. So saying, hey, we as BII will come along with, I don't want to use the word concessional, but we'll take some more risk and we'll put some more money in here and we'll really back people who we believe in. So the private sector can come along. But if we don't make that transition to the point where you have private financing who really believes that these businesses will work, who really believes that this continent is worth investing in and will become, one of the powerhouses of the globe in the next few decades. If we don't make that transition, we'll always be playing around the edges. And so I think bringing in private capital at scale is what we need to solve. We're really focused on that. So we're making higher IRR on our assets on the continent than you're able to make installing equivalent renewable assets in Europe, for instance. And I think that's really important to demonstrate that to investors. You can turn up, you can make money, you can transform outcomes for nations right across the continent. And I think that's driven, as long as we've got capitalism around, by the private sector joining in. And I think BII are focused, understand that, and have done that quite well so far. But we've got to scale that. It's got to get bigger.
Thank you so much. That's an excellent place, I think, to conclude this discussion. I just want to thank all three of you again for taking the time to share your thoughts with us and all those fantastic examples of the actual impact that you're delivering on the ground. Thank you to both our panels, in fact, and hopefully those thoughtful insights have given you a sense of why we're so excited about the partners that we work with.